I got a personal loan and maxed out 7 or 8 credit cards. And honestly, that was my finance of the company for the first 5 years. Was I would, during the spring and summer, I would get as many credit cards as I could. And then in the winter, when cash was good, I would pay them all. My score would shoot through the roof. And then I would get more credit cards, max them out in the spring and summer, pay them off the next winter.
What does it take to turn a simple necessity like firewood into a premium product that enhances every fireside experience? Today on Seek Go Create, we're excited to welcome Leroy Hite, CEO and founder of Cutting Edge Firewood, a company that has redefined the standards for firewood quality and customer service. Growing up in rural Northwest Georgia, not far from where I grew up, Leroy's early life around the woodpile and his later frustrations with subpar firewood led him to create a business that delivers nothing but the best. Whether it's for a cozy winter fire or a backyard pizza party, or just enjoying a quiet moment alone, possibly with a cigar or whiskey, Cutting Edge Firewood ensures every fire is perfect. Join us as we explore Leroy's journey from a young boy by managing his family's woodpile to becoming the entrepreneur behind the leading firewood supplier in the industry, and how his commitment to quality and customer service is lighting up lives one fire at a time. Leroy, welcome to Seek Go Create.
Thank you so much for having me.
Glad you're here. And you're coming to us from my old home state, right?
All right, Georgia.
What part of Georgia you in?
Metro Atlanta, Peachtree Corners specifically.
Peachtree Corners. When I was at Georgia Tech, my first co-op job was at a Georgia Power office up in Peachtree Corners. And while I was working there, I met my beautiful bride out in Lawrenceville, Georgia. And so that place has near and dear to my heart. And
So
this is going to age me. That was almost 40 years ago. Peachtree Corners was a pasture then. No, I'm just kidding.
no, that I'm sure.
And I'm coming to everybody from the Black Hills. We have relocated Theo, our RV. I'm up in the Black Hills of South Dakota and enjoying that. But Leroy, let's pretend let's say we're sitting on a plane and we just start chit-chatting. And I say, hey, what do you do? What's your answer when somebody asks you what you do?
I really have two answers, but the one I usually give is I own a firewood company, and I love to just see how they react. And people from different parts of the country, depending on if they've heard of us or not, usually react differently. And people used to act completely differently before we were well known than they do now. Used to, I would say that, and they would change the weather. Now, if they've heard of us, they're like, oh my goodness, you're not those guys, are you? So it's fun to see the difference. And it's a lot of fun just to say, I own a firewood company, because if they haven't heard about us, that they have no interest. Wow, you have all your teeth. That's incredible, kind of thing.
A lot of people would have, if they're from certain parts of the country, there's some people that would have no thought of this. But they have the thought of old beat up pickup trucks sitting on the side of the road with a load of firewood, pretty gnarly looking, but if you need firewood, you've got it. Reminded me of a place in Virgin, Utah, that they've got a big, pretty janky hand-painted sign out front that says organic firewood. And
is it spelled FIREWOOD or is it FIRWD?
I'm pretty sure they're organic.
For sale.
And I love a good marketing. I know you've done roadside signs. We may talk about that later, but I love it. It's intriguing to me. And when you're in like RV world, they sell you like 4 or 5 sticks of firewood for 10 or 12 bucks. It's like, the margin on it is amazing. But before we dive in, let's talk a little bit about big picture, macro firewood. I mean, I've heard you talk a little bit about what firewood leads to. I don't know that people are looking for firewood. I think they're looking for what firewood gives them. What are some of those things that they give us? And I think we're
Right.
going to have a good conversation about this.
So this is the other thing I tell people if I'm really wanting them to understand is a fire is like a beautiful sunset. There is no one on earth that dislikes it. It's universal, it's unifying, and it's primal. After a stressful day, oh yeah, forgot. You can take a 95-year-old man from Ethiopia and a 3-year-old girl from the state. They will both sit in front of a fire and stare at it. I actually have a 1-year-old, and if there's a fire in the room, she's always looking at it. But after a stressful day, I can take a whiskey, sit in front of the fire, and my stress level goes down. I think deep thoughts. My wife can come out, the mood changes, it's romantic. My daughters can come out and make s'mores and memories they will have for a lifetime. Teenagers will put their phones down and talk to their parents, and it can be at center of a wedding party. And I make incredible food with our cooking wood, whether it's steak, pizza, or barbecue. And I love on one side that experience. It's all around an experience. But then on the other side, yes, before we got into the industry, standard was wood set outside for 12 months, would rot, literally have mushrooms growing out of it. The business strategy, the customer service, and that overall customer experience that's so important to me match the product quality of rotting wood. I like to compare it to water, partially because I get a lot of comments like, why would I spend that much on wood? It literally grows on trees, which I say, why do you buy bottled water? It literally falls from the sky. And the industry was basically going into your backyard and getting water out of a puddle, a muddy puddle, and drinking that or using that. And we took the industry from that level, skipped getting water out of a well, skipped tap water, Dasani, Aquafina, and went straight to liquid death or whatever high-end fancy smancy bottled water in a glass bottle. And so really we've really come in and completely transformed the industry. I can't really think of another industry in the past few decades that was as ripe for disruption as firewood. So that's what we've done.
It is fascinating to me. And we're going to go through your leadership journey because I do agree from looking at things and from studying you guys, there's been it's one of these things where it's a disruption in an industry that probably no one knew. Now, let me say it this way. Probably no one knew the industry existed. A lot of people didn't. And so if they didn't know it existed, they didn't know it was ripe for disruption. But I want to stay high level before we go into the journey you've been on, because I think there's power in this message. When I was reading through your stuff, there's a couple things that jumped out at me that kind of tie in with our theme that we've been really having quite a good bit at Seek, Go, Create here, the leadership journey. We've been seeing this over and over again, and that is in a highly digital world, in a fast world, in a world with so much coming at us, things that are, I'll use the word analog, or things that are slower paced seem to be getting quite a bit of traction. And that's what I heard you say when you talked about fire. Again, let's don't talk about firewood yet. Let's talk about the fire for just a moment, because see, that to me is a lifestyle product that people are yearning for, correct?
Absolutely. It's only going to accelerate as everything online basically becomes fake as AI makes video and stuff. People will yearn, for the analog, for the natural, for physical experiences and connections with other people that aren't digital, that are in person or around the fire. You really can't beat. The only thing that comes close to sitting around the fire with connecting people is sitting around food. And food tastes better cooked over wood. So it's perfect.
And you can do
But
both.
it's the caveman TV. Yeah, you can do both. Exactly. And it's the caveman TV.
And you don't have any plans to generate or create AI fires, correct? Let's just go ahead and get that out of the way early on here.
It's funny. So many people I get the allure and the reason behind doing it. People all the time might be an exaggeration, but I've had a lot of people over the years say, you need to do a video of a fire and put it on YouTube that's for an hour that just loops so that people, and I'm like, no, do with that. Like, I'll do a video on how to start a fire, how to use our firewood and things like that, but I'm not, it has nothing to do with us.
So would you consider, is your leadership style, would you be like high energy? Do you have hustle in your makeup at all?
Hustle is absolutely in my makeup. I'm not comparing myself to some leaders that I know that are high energy. I wouldn't say I'm high energy. I definitely can come across more high energy than your average person. And I can come across as optimistic, although in reality, I'm a realist. But it's, I think what people ultimately, the two things that really come through that I think people see is passion and perseverance, which kind of makes it grit, really. It is people, when I talk about a beautiful fire and how it, like a sunset, people hear the passion, they feel the passion, but then when they see my story or when they work with me, they see the grit of just, I keep going no matter what. Keep going no matter what happens. Giving up isn't really an option.
The reason I asked that question, one of the things that I do, and we talk about it quite a bit here, are how to balance, and balance isn't even the right word. Let's say integrate. How to integrate our faith, family, all that we really are, that we say sometimes are important to us, but maybe it doesn't line up on our calendars and things like that. And what I found, I briefly told you a little bit about my story before we hit record, but what I found with me is that I was addicted to more or being busy. And I just kept, it was more. If there was one company, we wanted to start another one. If there was real estate, we didn't need 10, 50 properties. We needed 100, 150. We weren't going to buy one a month. We were going to buy 5 a month. All of that, it was just more. So here's what I believe a fire is. Let me connect some dots here, because let me tell you what the RV life did for me. It forced me to be patient. I cannot be in a hurry and drive this 40-foot square box of a vehicle. My thought is, and I'm going to ask you this in a form of a question, is that you can't be in a rush with fire. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah, absolutely. A fire, the whole point of it is to start it and sit back and relax and either get lost in conversation or get lost in deep thought, staring at a fire. It's all, and yeah, me specifically, I am definitely that drive. And it's funny, I'm an all or nothing kind of guy. If I'm working out, I have the hardest time not pushing myself to the limit. If anything I do, it's all or nothing. But it's funny, I could flip a switch. And a perfect example of that is, and a lot of people have a hard time believing this, every Sunday, I take off completely. I check out. I turn my work brain off. And so it's a all or nothing, but nothing. I do leave my phone across the room so I'm not tempted to open it and look at it. And I spend about 2 hours staring at a fire on the Sunday. I spend a lot of time reading books to my girls. I read a lot of books to my daughters, spend time with my wife. We go to church in the morning. And so it's that, just flip a switch. But when I do flip the switch back on, I have a hard time stopping until I decide. And in fact, in 2022, I actually took the month of March off and did no work for the month. Just flip the switch. It's all or nothing for me.
Is that like people in the faith world will call that a Sabbath? People in just the business world will call it a sabbatical, which obviously has a very similar root. Call it that, or is it just you? Because I do believe that clearing our mind is what allows for creativity and being intentional and things like that. Give me a little bit more on that, because I could tell you people aren't good at that typically.
Yes. And it took me a while to really dial it in, and I've gotten better over time. But flipping the switch it takes self control. But once it becomes a habit, you love it. And it's not, we're just better for it. And you get more done with that time. I think a great example, of course, Chick-fil-A and what they've been able to do with being closed one day a week. But professional athletes and physical scientists have proven even your body, if you take a day off, you do better. The world's leading experts on lifting weights advise an absolute maximum of working out 6 days a week. If you work out 7 days a week, you will not get as good. It's not that you'll get the same results, you'll get worse results. And it's the same thing in work and sometimes emergencies can come up, and really part of the habit is, and I almost forget about it now because I've been doing it for so long, is on Saturday, when you're talking about work, tomorrow is Monday. And it's funny, people at our business sometimes will do that. And I catch it because I want to make sure we're on the same page, but it'll be Saturday and they'll say, I'm going to do this tomorrow. I'll reach out to you tomorrow. And I'm like, by tomorrow, you mean Monday, right? And it's always yes. So people have even just bought into it internally in the business. But it's amazing just coming back refreshed and how much more creativity I have when you take that time off. It just allows your brain to process the thoughts and allows you to be more creative. And on the other hand, even if you're not a creative type, it allows you, and everybody has creativity, but even if you don't consider yourself as a creative type, it stops burnout. Working 7 days a week is a guaranteed way to burn yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also believe it helps us make better decisions. It limits mistake. There's all types of benefit. And if someone's listening in here, if they've been listening to the 250 plus episodes, they know that message is important. But I want to say that our first learning point for anyone listening in is sit by a fire more often, have more fires. And I heard 2 hours. Is that
Amen.
is that what you're saying? Is that the 3 steps of success from Leroy? First, sit by a fire for 2 hours a week.
Yeah. So a minimum of 2 hours. Earlier last year, I started Sundays. I do that. And I actually listen to 2 sermons on Sundays. And then I've started a habit of during the week having about a 2-hour fire and just staring at the fire for 2 hours.
That's
and it's
nice.
amazing just how much better I feel after that.
So one of the things for me, the reason that I'm asking so many questions about the fire as opposed to the firewood, we're about to get to the firewood, but
I love it.
And because I think it's what's driving the passion, it's the marketing, it's the message, it's the purpose, all of that. We've got cars out here. I'm interested in how they're built, but I need them for what they do for me. And so a couple of things I thought of when I was thinking about the fire, there's a masterclass for those people that have masterclass. There's one by Aaron Walker, who's the Texas barbecue specialist. And I found myself getting frustrated with this. Leroy, you would probably appreciate it. But on masterclass, it's about a 12-session class. And before he even talks about barbecue, he actually does. Aaron Franklin. Yeah, sorry. Did I say Walker? Aaron Franklin. Sorry about that. Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah,
Aaron Franklin.
Yeah,
and I think he does about 4 episodes on the fire. Just the fire. So that's pretty cool. Mention this is a pitch, and I think it blends in well. I might need to connect you guys. In a couple of weeks, I'm interviewing a guy named Burke Atkerson. He's out of Colorado Springs, and he's written a book called Fire Nights. And he's in ministry, and the ministry is all about getting a handful of guys around a fire once a week. And oddly enough, or interestingly enough, there's sometimes a cigar, there's sometimes a sip of whiskey, and it's really all about men connecting at a deeper level, which men are typically not real good at. So I'm just
Mhm.
mentioning that to you and also to the audience to be looking for that. If I could time it well, I might actually put these episodes back to back and see if we could have the firewood and the fire nights combined there. So anyway, fire definitely
Perfect.
important, and I like that it brings patience in a world that's hurry up and go fast. So with
Mhm.
that, let's shift a little bit and let's talk about how cutting cutting edge came to be. And I know there's a lot of story here, and there's places people can go to get a lot of it. But I think what I'd love to do is I know you grew up in Northwest Georgia. I
Mhm.
think I'm going to force you, Leroy, to give me one or two key things from
Mhm.
Leroy the early years, okay, that have
Mhm.
impacted you. Could be positive or negative, something that's driven you, that's gotten you where you are, or something that is called a Scarlett O'Hara moment. As God is my witness, I am never going to blank. Mine is I'm never going to work corporate again. I'm not going to work corporate. And God is my witness
Yeah.
for the reference. Just a couple of things growing
Yeah.
up. Obviously, you were
Yep.
exposed to trees and fires and
Mhm.
all of that. But what else? What's come to mind when I force you to come up with one or two items?
Yeah. Funny, I don't really have the I will never whatever moments when it comes to it's funny because I have it like I do have goals, but they're not goals, they're visions. And I'm just working in a general direction um, with the business. And growing up, I didn't know I was going to be an entrepreneur. It's hard to, I might make it three. I might break the rules. I never was a rule follower. I grew up Northwest Georgia, pretty poor, one of eight kids, had a ton of chores growing up and had I could give so many examples, but tons and tons of chores, yard work. And I remember one of the chores was cutting the grass and trimming the grass. And I remember we had these scissors. We didn't have a weed eater. We had these scissors that I would use to cut around trees and the phone pole. And they were so dull that it was literally a break even whether you should use them or just pull the grass. And so half the time you would see me out there pulling the grass up around the trees and the poles. And that was the kind of manual labor that I grew up in doing. And so I think that really instilled a level of work ethic that I'm not scared to work hard and, and which I'm very thankful for. Hated it at the time, of course. But I remember even as a teenager going and helping other people that had kids with yard work, and they would always comment on, wow, you have a really good work ethic. And I didn't really think much of it at the time, but looking back on it, I'm like, yeah, apparently I did have a pretty good work ethic. Um, the next one is, and I'll talk more about her probably in the story, but dating my wife when we were 17, working at Chick-fil-A. We got married spring break, junior year of college. Um, and she's been incredible as an entrepreneurial wife. But in that, oh yeah, and then the next one would be during college at Berry College, they had an entrepreneurial program and I would definitely say it lodged something in my head that I could not get out of my head, just the entrepreneurial bug, the spark, the ember, whatever, if you want to do corny puns. But it really did lodge in my head. And while I was there, I started a different firewood company. And I just realized this is completely undisrupted. It's a backwards thing. Like me just sitting down for 30 minutes and thinking about it, I could come up with new ideas to innovate their industry. And so it was a, it's a comparison. It was a completely undisrupted forest that nobody had really gone through to disrupt it. There were no paths. And that was absolutely a turning point. that I can look back at and be like, that was a defining moment of my career.
Can you think, was there any clues to that entrepreneur spirit, entrepreneurism prior?
Mhm.
But it's a very odd story for someone to say they were in a program or a class. Our daughter, actually, she went to High Point University up in North Carolina, and they had an entrepreneur
Mhm.
program, which I thought it was an oxymoron for someone to be in college and studying entrepreneurship.
Uh-huh.
You get it, you understand that, but I
Mhm.
guess it can help unlock it. Looking back, were there any
Yeah.
clues growing up that you may have had it other than the work ethic? And I may come back to that later, but
Yeah.
other than that, something that you said, you know what, I need to make me some money and I'm gonna figure out a way to do it.
I think it's work ethic and looking back, and I even knew it at the time, ish. I've always looked at things differently than other people. Even in college, I played a lot of Halo and a lot of Halo, and I miss it. It was a lot of fun. That was a flipping a switch that when I started this business and had a daughter, I was like, "Oh, that's gone. That's over." Gave my Xbox to my nephews, and even in that, like, I wasn't particularly skilled, like, in reflexes and being able to, but there were other people way more skilled than me, but my strategy, and it was just really, my gut strategy, I played differently than anybody else that I ever met. Um, and like when I think about rules, I always go to people think there's either rule followers or rebels. There's a third option, and that is you look at the reason behind the rules. And I did that. Is I look at the reason behind the rules and I try and follow, when I agree with them, the spirit of the rule versus the letter of the rule. And so I think those are some kind of instances. It's funny, when I worked at Enterprise, we took this personality test, I think it was. And when it happened, I was like, oh, that is interesting. One of the questions, and I don't remember what the question was, it was ranking your level of independence. I think it like 1 to 50. It was when I was an assistant manager, and all the assistant managers were single digit. I want to say they were like 7 to 9. Maybe there was one that had an 11. All the area managers which were our boss's boss, the highest was like a 23. If I remember correctly, I was like a 47.
And they all
So
looked at,
I
and they
think
all
some of
looked at
those
you like, dude, they said, dude, why are you here?
yeah. So I think that was, and obviously I had the entrepreneurial spirit lodged into me at that point. But so those were some looking back. It is funny though, now think of me as like extreme creative type. Growing up, nobody thought of me as a creative. And even some of my college buddies have over the last few years commented, you came up with that? I can't believe that. Kind of thing. But
One
yeah,
thing related
so
to one thing related to creativity, I'm going to ask this before we leave the
mhm,
early years. I'm going to ask a little bit
mhm,
about your faith because I've heard your story and I know that later it's significant. I think a significant thing that you did as you started your business, but I don't think that those things are just you wake up one morning and say, "Oh, I'm going to do something that shows my faith and then I'm a follower of Christ or something today." No, and
right.
listen, truthfully,
Yep.
they're clues. When someone says they work for Chick-fil-A, it's like immediately Truett Cathy spoke at my wife's
Mhm.
graduation.
Mine
Like,
too.
yeah, yeah. Tell me a
Yep.
little bit about, there's two things that I want to frame before we dive into some leadership styles and things like that. And that is, tell me a little bit about your faith growing up. Were you a family of faith? Were you a Christian coming out of the womb, or was
Mhm.
there a decision later on? I, I I've talked to people that
That's what
claim
you
that.
call
Yeah,
the ultra reformed.
yeah. I'm not saying that's good theology, but I'm telling you, I've had people that have said something like, "I've been Christian as long as I could remember." In fact,
You
might
can
even
call
back.
me John the Baptist Jr. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you know that
Absolutely.
story with
So
them in the womb.
listen, you mentioned a couple of things that were
Yeah.
significant. Big family, 8 kids, Northwest Georgia, so you're in the Bible Belt. You work for
Mhm.
Chick-fil-A, and you said you were poor. So I'm sitting here going, "Man, this is like a
That means
solid
Christian.
Christian kid." Homeschool?
Uh-huh.
Can I get a
Yep.
homeschool out of that?
No, it was public school. Although ironically, my daughters had been in private school, but my wife led this decision, but we're actually going to homeschool them next year, which I'm pretty excited about. But I was at no public school. I thought I was going to send my kid to public school, but the world's an interesting place now, and especially with 4 daughters. Very quickly, that just dissolved. It wasn't even like a decision. It was just but public school, and it's a lot of actually that could be another clue to being an entrepreneur. I was really like self-educated. I to give credit to where credit's due, I had a 4th grade teacher that introduced me to the Hardy Boys books, and in the 5th grade, it might still be the all-time record, but I crushed the all-time record in number of books I read. So I basically read all the Hardy Boys books in the 5th grade. And, but that kind of started my love of learning and being self-taught. And like in school, I got to where I would just ignore the teacher and I would read history books and read through the science book. And so I was really self-taught, even though I was sitting in class, I would use that time to teach myself. And I grew up in a Christian family, solid Christian parents. Very thankful for that. And so with that, my love of reading at an early age, started reading through the Bible, read through it multiple times. Yeah, and I have a very useful skill set. I'm not the best at memorizing, but I have a phenomenal skill to remember the gist, the summary of what I heard. How that played out in college is I could sit in classes, not take notes, not study for the test, and I would make an A or a B usually. But so I read through the Bible many times and got a good understanding of it. And yeah, and I put my faith official it as I grew up, it became official. You leave your parents' faith and it becomes your faith at some point. High school and into college, that definitely happened to me officially. But there's never a time, as long as I can remember, that I wouldn't have called myself, that you wouldn't have looked at my life and thought, yeah, he's probably a Christian. Along those lines, with the business, something that cool that are along those lines is we've had a few customers ask our customer service department, "Are y'all a Christian business?" Solely because of our level of customer service,
Right.
which I think is a big compliment.
Yeah. Technically, a company cannot be saved. There cannot be salvation for a S corp, C corp. Again, theological
Yeah,
stuff here.
yeah,
But the
yeah.
leader, the founder, the
Mhm,
company can run with principles, and it's when we share love. I'm doing a deep dive study on the kingdom of God right now, and a lot of it's going to spill over into
mhm,
business. What does that mean
mhm.
for business standpoint? Do you think that Cutting Edge would exist if your faith wasn't what it was?
There were, and we can dive into this however you want, but it, between the time when I had the previous firewood company and when I started Cutting Edge Firewood, looking back on it, I wouldn't have called it this at the time, but looking back on it, it was a loud and clear calling, but I was way too afraid, um, to lean into that. Because I had the theological truth, but I didn't have the experience of that theological truth of really leaning into what you think God's calling you to do, stepping out in faith. And that played, and it's when I started the business, we'll get into this, but I started it basically fasting and praying and looking at the sermons. And there's been so many times when I've been in the fetal position and I've gone back to different biblical truths over and over again, listening to sermons on faith, listening to people in the Bible exercising their faith. and really seeing it's been really comforting looking at biblical figures and seeing my story in many ways reflect their story. Um, just like them, I'm far from perfect, made a lot of mistakes, but God uses both the good things I do, the intelligent things I do, and the dumb mistakes I've made to teach me and to make me into who I've become. And ultimately, when you wash everything away, or if you burned everything away, the foundation is ultimately on my faith. That's what I lay the business and my future on, is that rock. And the verse, of course, that you build the house on the rock. And it of course doesn't promise financial. It's not that the Bible promises that you're going to be rich or that your life is going to be easy. And in fact, my life has not been easy. But at the core, that's what I based everything on.
So it's interesting. This is what I've heard along the way with this conversation. And I would agree that faith is in all likelihood the foundation, because the faith probably fed a lot of the growing up, the work ethic, things like that. I'm guessing that the faith probably led to was it Michaela? Led to your wife, which is a lot of people will say who you choose or who God chooses for you, or however people look at it, to be your spouse is a significant factor in whether or not someone succeeds. And I'm sure you could tell story after story. We may not have time for it here. If I could with my wife, it's my goodness, why did she stick around with me? And the things that I asked her to go through, and I'm sure you've got the same story. And all of those things built up. And then we're going to hit through this real quick. I mean, I've heard Chick-fil-A, you were considering being an owner operator. You worked at the car company. Enterprise. Yeah, which probably that was cool. I don't want to go there though. And then I think I saw it's a different type firewood. Were you at Georgia Pacific? Were you like big corporation?
Yes.
It's a firewood company.
Yep. They hope the wood doesn't burn there, but yeah.
Okay, sorry. But I think everything, I do believe the path that God leads us on is a preparation for getting to a place. And it's not as if we arrive, it continues. It's why we call this the leadership journey. That's part of the journey. And then the two things I heard there, these are kind of church words we're using. And so called, and that you fasted and prayed, and it led to this business starting and things like that. And some people have trouble understanding that called. Let's don't get into the fasting and praying. I think it's just a way of clearing our head. Can we leave it at that and move on for maybe someone listening going, how does that work? Yeah, we're not going to do a teaching on fasting and praying here.
Yeah. And for the record, that was the first time that I'd ever done it. And it was spur of the moment. It wasn't even planned.
It was spur of the moment for you. It was probably not spur of the moment for God.
Yeah, probably. I think that's theologically correct for sure.
So what year did Cutting Edge get started? Let's tell a little bit about that story in the time we've got left here. So Cutting Edge, this was, you went through a lot of items that were probably preparing you truthfully for starting this company, this business. You had done the thing in college and all of that. So what year are we at with Cutting Edge and the fasting and the prayer that you did? And then bam, let's start a business.
2013. Yeah, 2013.
So now we're talking about 10 or 11 years, and you started the business, and it was money in the bank, and everything was just super duper right out of the gate. And you've been living the dream life ever since, right?
Oh, what's his name? My mind's gone blank. The cut up your credit cards guy.
Dave.
Yeah, Dave. Yeah. I'm Dave Ramsey's worst nightmare.
Are you the guy who talked against? Yeah, we did that with real estate too. Did you build your company on credit cards?
Yeah, absolutely. That was I got a personal loan and maxed out 7 or 8 credit cards. And honestly, that was my finance of the company for the first 5 years. Was I would, during the spring and summer, I would get as many credit cards as I could. So I got as many credit cards as I could. And then in the winter, when cash was good, I would pay them all. My score would shoot through the roof. And then I would get more credit cards, max them out in the spring and summer, pay them off the next winter. And so my credit score would go from 300 to 800 a couple times a year. And it was just a roller coaster, but I would go higher and higher with my credit score. And that's how I financed the business for the first few years until I got to the level that I got my first SBA.
Because originally it was firewood. You were in the South in an area that has
just
about
in Atlanta.
Has a 3 or 4 month winter, and sometimes they don't have a winter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Did you ever consider moving? Did you ever consider going somewhere else? Go farther north? Sorry, man, but
not initially. I've thought a lot about it in the last few years. But then now that we shift to 48 states, there's less of a reason, but I still think about it and debate. It'd be interesting to have a location in Boston or New York or any other Northeast city.
So
Dallas, Texas is pretty interesting too, but
it is. So you started and it was still pretty much firewood, seasonal. People don't want it March through November-ish. And so you're on an up and down. Tell me, when was the time that this went from just a firewood for people's fireplaces or outdoors to something bigger? Give me, if it's a multiple step along the way or if it's a point in time, because to me, that's where creativity and to me that those are divine type moments, in my opinion, for companies. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, there are really two super critical points. One was in 2017 when I went to my wife and said, hey, we got to take this to the next level. I know we have 2 little girls at home and you're 8 months pregnant with our third. I got this wonderful idea. Let's sell our house and invest it in the business. And we did that. I took that money, redid the branding, hired our first delivery artisan, hired the first employee that was taking care of customer service, got our warehouse, and reinvented again how to do deliveries. And what that led to, we would just stack all the firewood we included the rack and have a patent on that. And that took the deliveries from approximately 2 hours once I arrived at the house to about 15 minutes once our delivery artisan arrives at the house. It made it way safer, and it made it where it was efficient enough that we could make money. Before that, it was way too dangerous. There's no way I could have paid somebody else to do it. And so it was like, it would take about 18 hours to do 8 deliveries the first 4 years when I was doing, and then it went down to where now you can do about 16 deliveries and 7.5, 8 hours kind of thing. And so that was hugely important. And then in 2019, we started putting up yard signs around town, and they were just our logo. And put them hundreds and hundreds of them out, and eventually we started putting them in our customers' yard. And we started leaning into cooking wood and pizza wood, and then we made our first dollar outside of Georgia. And all those things added up to, talking about divine timing, that was at the end of 2019, and in 2020, obviously COVID happened. And we just immediately ranked year over year, which is hard when you have to have the employees and the raw materials in advance and the systems and the SOPs. That was hard scaling like that, but massive growth. And so the cooking wood and firewood, the cooking wood and pizza wood went from essentially probably 5% of our revenue to 20% of our revenue, while our overall revenue 4x. And we made our first dollar outside of Georgia, where now it's the majority of our revenue.
So,
is outside of Georgia.
so did some of that level out the seasonal aspect of the business?
It did to a large degree. We'll do in our best month compared to our worst month, 3.5 times as much. Whereas um, it used to be, it was about 15 times as much in our best month versus our worst month. So it's still quite seasonal, but it's a lot better than it used to be.
Yeah, I love the industrial and systems engineer at Georgia Tech is getting excited in me. You talking about that process and delivery improvement. Was that the same delivery that you do outside of the Georgia market, or are you just shipping, or what have you
Just
done
shipping
to,
outside.
I mean, because it's not as if firewood, cooking wood is a light product.
Correct.
Tell me a little bit more about that, what that
Mhm.
looks like.
Yeah, really, we build it into the business model. We build it into the price. And it's not cheap shipping it, but because it's the best, people that want the best are willing to pay a premium price for a better experience. And really, if you look at it and you're like, why are people paying that much more for wood? You'll never understand unless you make the leap to, oh, they're not paying for wood, they're paying for an experience. And people will pay a premium for experiences.
They're paying for that experience we talked about at the beginning,
Yes,
that
correct.
peace, that relaxation, and things like that.
And really, at the end of the day, like having a fire, the whole reason you do it is enjoy it, to have an experience. So why go somewhere else and spend half or even a fourth of the money to have a terrible experience where you can't get it started, or you have it stored in your home and bugs are crawling out of it, or it smokes and everybody smells terrible afterwards? It's really, ours burns hotter. You want the heat. You want it to burn longer. You want the ambiance. You want the lively flame. You want the amazing aroma. And you want, yeah, less smoke. You want it to start easy. There's, it's miserable to try and start bad firewood. You're sitting there playing with it for an hour and then you just have to continually go and attend it when you should be sitting back and enjoying it.
Right. There are some companies that I've interacted with that their goal is to be the lowest cost on the market. Some companies, they want to scale and address the masses. And everything that I'm hearing from you is, I'll throw out some words and then you could just respond in whatever way you want to. Quality, not just the experience of the
Absolutely.
product. Yeah, not just the experience of the product, but as I understand it, it seems like the customer service experience. I think I see that Terry Bradshaw is a big fan of you guys and a big
Mhm.
customer and all of that, which is cool. And so lowest cost is not your
Is
goal.
not
I'm guessing the
not
product
the
is
goal.
pricey relative, but and then I also want to throw in here competition. I I think I've
Mhm.
heard you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you really don't have competition. Is that correct? So whatever you want to
Yeah,
address with all those words.
yeah. On quality, what I always say is any products we release, I want it to be the best in class in quality. And I break up quality into aesthetic and functional. And I want us to be the best in both. So when it comes to the firewood, our firewood is beautiful. You can use it to decorate. And the racks of firewood that are on our website, every single rack that leaves our facility looks that good. We have an internal mantra of pretend that every rack or every product that's leaving our facility is going to Terry Bradshaw or that it's going to a photo video shoot. And when Terry Bradshaw places an order, there's no internal memo that says this is going to Terry Bradshaw. It better look perfect, because that's the internal. Everybody knows that for everything that leaves. Um, so that's the quality piece. Competition. I kind of as a visual, I say when we act like this is lore, this is where the competition was, or when I entered the market probably about right here, and I've moved up to here. Are we a lifestyle business? So even when you say we're a firewood business kind of thing, and I've had a lot of, maybe as many as 50 like imitators enter the market right here. If you asked me if I was honest and would I wish that they weren't there, the answer would be yes. But it's more of just competing for Google search terms and things like that. But they're not as good as, they're worse than ever been. And really, they're like an off brand, and by that brand, slightly stale version of us. You'll see a lot of logos have an act in it. They have similar colors. Their website just so happens to be exactly laid out like ours. And when we update our layout, it seems like several other websites update theirs within about 6 months after us. Um, there's a firewood company I know of that their tagline is "We edge out the competition." And then there's another, we offer racks of firewood, and we're the only firewood company. I own the patent. And that's another one that their tagline is "Unracked firewood." And I'm like, have a little bit of originality. It's like they're looking at us when they come up with their branding and their taglines and everything. And really, it's hard to look at it this way, but in reality, whether they definitely don't mean it this way, but it is a compliment, because it's the whole imitation is the greatest form of flattery. And if they're going to do it, imitating us is the best way, because that means they're always behind us and they don't have the same passion or grit, and they don't have the same quality standards. They just want to imitate without putting the effort in. They're not going to be successful. And once again, we're up here and there's 40, 50 down here. There's still some of the ones down here, but they're right here. And the other thing that's interesting is none of them imitate us in our full lineup. You mentioned that we were talking about the fire pit later. Not even like that aside, there's some that'll dip some wood. There's some that'll do cooking wood. And then there's some that'll do a local firewood delivery. None of them deliver firewood like we do, because we own a patent on it, and we have our own custom software, and we spend too much money on the trucks, and our delivery artisans are salaried employees that get paid well, and they can't do that. They can't imitate that. But yeah, that's the competition.
Just the fact that you call your people delivery artisans should tell people something.
That's right.
Yeah, our guy with the truck, he'll be there. When's he going to be there? Next week.
I got a lot of funny stories on that, mostly from what customers just told us. Like I had a guy tell me that he went with the quote unquote competition, and the guy forgot to put the brake on his truck when he parked in the driveway, and it came out of gear and hit his Mercedes, and the guy didn't have insurance. There's the bug infestation stories. There's stories that I almost feel bad talking about, like pregnant women delivering firewood, where the people feel so bad that they do the delivery. And then, but my favorite is one time a firewood owner company, and this is many years ago, invited me to come and meet with them. And they were just nonchalantly talking about how their delivery guy was in jail. And they're like, the firewood industry. And I was like, oh my gosh, none of our delivery artisans have ever been in jail before.
Yeah.
So they're basically sending like a convict into other people's homes to deliver firewood. That's interesting.
I appreciate the disruption you've done in raising the bar. I had a client years ago, not far from where you're located there, that was in the pool maintenance and cleaning business. And there was some similar thoughts there. There was so many things we had to do to get that business cleaned up with delivery people that were smoking dope and just all kinds of stuff.
Mhm.
So I like what you're
Mhm.
doing. What's the size of the organization with people now? Where are you at? Not that people is a great measurement, but I got just a couple of questions here I want to ask related to that, and then we'll talk about product and be done.
Mhm. So we're at about 30 people now.
Excellent. And tell me about your current leadership style, whatever you can tell me about it, because I'm sure it's grown from 0 to
Mhm.
now 30. That's a great sweet spot. A lot of the clients I work with
I'm
are
just
right
a
at
guy
that
that
level.
started a firewood company.
Yeah.
No, yeah, my leadership style, I have strong standards that I hold employees to, but a I'm a hands-off leader that will from time to time check in. That makes sense, to make sure everything's good and strong. Um, so some of it, yeah, the employees have gotten used to just me being like coming in and critiquing a random response to a customer, or being like, oh my gosh, I love that message from so and so talking about how much they love the product. Like that customer just sent an email saying that he tried out all the other cooking wood suppliers over a 6-month period, and he's donating $3,000 worth of it to a barbecue competition, and a bunch of professionals are going to be there. Did you see that message? And I'm like the first one that saw it, because yeah, exactly. And so it's either that, or that was a pretty good response to that upset customer. This is how I would do it slightly differently.
Sure.
But they're used to it. Whereas if some business leaders did that, their employees would either get really defensive because they would think you were attacking them, or they might have a heart attack that they actually care that much. But I hate micromanaging. And I've over the past few years actually struggled a little bit, and it's been a learning time for sure, that I've always wanted to just hand off things as soon as they say, I've got it. But in reality, most people, when they say, I've got it, they don't quite got it. And you need to stay involved and give them additional feedback for a little while longer and make sure they've really got it. And then you slowly back away. Whereas I want to be like, here, catch this. I'm going to do this new idea kind of thing.
Are
Because
you
I'm
starting to
definitely,
see some leaders and a leadership team develop with 30 people? You're probably starting to identify that.
yeah. And we have a leadership team, and it's grown definitely over the past years. And we have our director of operations to be a great people's leader. And with me, can I step in and coach and lead people? Yes, but it's not what drives me. And I want to be I want to come in and give people high fives and tell them great job and get people excited, and then and then think about which of my 50 ideas in my head I want to prioritize and do next. How can I reinvent something that's already been reinvented? I constantly go through the business and I'm like, I know I reinvented how to do a local delivery. Are there any other things that and I have ideas how to reinvent it again, but should I focus on that, or should I focus on this other idea?
That's one of the most difficult things that organizations moving from the entrepreneur, the person that's tasked, get it done, to now moving in a strategic type mode. That's primarily the work that I do now. And one of the cool new things you
Yep.
came up with, and this is where we're going to transition. We're right up at the end of our time here. I want you to tell us a
Mm-hmm.
little bit about the wood, because we didn't talk a lot about, we talked about the fire, which to me is the most important thing. However, I want to finish up
Absolutely.
because I know you could probably tell us about the breadth of the type wood that you've got. And then I want you to lead into this new cool thing that I'm looking at on your website right now, which will include links everywhere to this fire pit that is like some kind of space age deal that looks cool. So tell us about the wood and then the fire pit. And then I've got one more question before we finish up.
On the firewood side, we have premium oak, we have artisanal hickory, wild cherry, orchard apple, and redwood. And we have that in premium, really luxury boxes that ship to 48 states. We have it locally in several cities in the Southeast, and what our firewood rack, our delivery artisans deliver. And then we have our ultimate package, which are 5 of those racks that come, and they come with a hand truck so that you can easily move it around and some other goodies. And then that's, of course, what Terry Bradshaw buys are the ultimate packages. And in the cooking wood, we have post oak, we have hickory, cherry, apple, maple, pecan, and then we have Savannah heat. Savannah heat, everybody, what is that? It's a wood that comes from Africa. It's an invasive species, so it's actually good for baby cheetahs and rhinos if you use it. So you can just buy it and burn it just to help the environment. Um, and then we have wood for different size pizza ovens. And everything, when it's fresh, it's cut down and put into a big oven where it's dried out, and then it's stored inside, and it is literally hand selected. And by that, every single person that is either stacking the racks or the boxes is trained to know the difference between if something's rotten, if it has any imperfections, or if it's not quite dry enough. They're all trained in that, and our quality control is without a doubt the highest in the world. And yeah, so those are the different firewood and cooking wood and pizza wood species that we have. And what that does, it comes back to ultimately is the product quality, which goes to the experience. On the fire pit, so around a lot of fire pits in my time, the number 2 most common complaint that I always heard was the firewood smokes. So we fixed that with higher quality firewood. And they have of course, the smokeless fire pit that also helps some. But the number 1 complaint I always heard is my feet freeze. You can hold your hands over the fire for your hands to be warm, but my lower body or my feet freeze. Or even my kids put their feet up on the fire pit and melt the bottom of their soles. So we have started taking pre-orders and are launching the world's first thermoelectric fire pit. What that is, smokeless fire pits have 2 layers. This has a 3rd layer, and in the 3rd layer, it circulates the air, and it converts some of the heat into electricity that powers 4 fans on the bottom of the fire pit, which blows out that air that's circulating, warm air in a 360-degree area around the fire pit. A month and a half, 2 months ago, we were outside, and it was in the mid 50s on my back deck. And my wife, jokingly, "You can't do this, people," said, "I'm trying to figure out how we can bring this fire pit inside because of the ambiance, the warmth around the fire pit." Basically, the whole deck, which is a pretty good size one, warmed up a bit. But particularly 6 to 8 feet around it, it's just this envelope bubble of warmth because it goes down first and then heat rises. So really, like, your whole area is warm. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Very cool. Probably don't need to bring it in the RV either. Outside, yes, not inside. Yeah, we don't
Correct.
recommend that, folks. Man, that's awesome. It's like some
Yep.
cool stuff, and I'd love to go into that a little bit more, but let's just tell people to check it out. We'll include links below so people can check all that out. The
Perfect.
website, phenomenal. The experience and all that you stand for, Leroy, it's so beautiful. I love it.
Much
I know there's a
appreciated.
lot more to the story, but I think I caught the essence of what you and the company are trying to create. And I do want to mention the website, which is, go ahead and tell us the website. And I think LinkedIn is the best place for people to find you, right? What's the website name?
Yeah, if you want to connect with me, Leroy Hite, on LinkedIn, on the website, it is cuttingedgefirewood.com.
Very good. We'll include that down below. Leroy, we're seek, go, create. I'll let you pick one of those words, just means more to you or resonates or jumps out at you. Seek, go, or create. Which one and why is my last question.
Create. Even though growing up, nobody thought I was creative as an entrepreneur, I love creating new ideas, thinking outside the box, and building upon it. So just building something. So it's what I really enjoy doing.
Awesome. Says the guy who just invented and could be disrupting the fire pit industry now is a creator. And I definitely agree with that. Thanks for joining us, Leroy. We're Seek Go Create. We have new episodes here every Monday. Continue supporting us. You could go to seekgocreate.com/support and you can buy me a coffee or a whiskey, or you can contribute some funds and I could get me some high-end firewood and maybe that fire pit we just talked about when it's released. So anyway, you could leave as little as $1 or all the way up to whatever you would like and leave comments there. So listen, I appreciate you being here. Check out everything that Leroy talked about. That is a phenomenal business. We'll include some links also to some other episodes where he's gone in deeper detail on the business and things. I just wanted to catch some of the high level things that he's doing. And I think we did a great job of that. Thanks again. Until next time, continue being all that you were created to be.